name's Judd Ashman. I have the honor of serving you as mayor of the city of Gaithersburg, and I'm the founder of this festival. I'm so glad to have you here. Before we get to Dave Barry, I want to introduce Tom Shroder, an award-winning author and editor whose work you definitely know, but didn't necessarily know it was his, because how often do you know the names of the editors of the books and the articles that you read? We invited Tom to lead the program here today because he's brilliant and because one of his jobs as an editor was over at the Miami Herald, where he edited Dave Barry's work. So this program could either be a delightful reunion of two long-lost friends or a really uncomfortable settling of unresolved scores. We shall see. Let's give a warm welcome to Tom Shroder. So maybe 9 or 10 years ago, I will never forget this. Local people, I was in my car getting on I-270 North at Falls Road when the phone rings. It was my mom, and she says, "Judd, listen, I'm with Dave Barry, and I'm going to put him on the phone." Now, my first thought was she must be making this up, but she wasn't. My mom and Steve, my stepdad, were at a fundraiser at the Arch Center in Miami, and Dave Barry had jumped behind the bar to serve people drinks, as one does. So my mom, being my mom, must have cornered him and said, "My son loves you," or idolizes you, or something equally true and mildly emasculating. And can we call him? And Dave's apparently a really good sport. So there it was. I'm in my car, dumbstruck, and Dave Barry gets on the phone and says something to the effect of, "Hi, Judd. I want you to know that your mom's running around drunk and making a commotion, but everything's going to be okay." Postscript, he was right. Everything was okay. As it happens, both my mom and Steve are in the audience. Give them a round of applause. As a kid growing up in Miami, aside from the sports section, the one thing in the Miami Herald I'd never miss was Dave Barry's column in the Sunday Tropic magazine. From my perspective, Dave Barry was really the voice of South Florida in all of its iconic looniness and absurdity. His new book, Swamp Story, is a perfect example of all that. A story with characters so preposterous that they could only exist in Florida and, in fact, seem quite realistic there. As much as Dave Barry was our guy in Miami, his column ran in more than 500 newspapers across the country and earned him a Pulitzer Prize. But that's not all it earned him. According to his website, the city of Grand Forks, North Dakota, named a sewage lifting station after him. To which Dave points out very few authors have attained this honor. Years ago, in his seminal work, Dave Barry's Guide to Marriage and or Sex, Dave speculated that the most serious issue likely to come between a man and a woman living together is, in fact, dirt. Women, he said, for some reason, can see individual dirt molecules, whereas men tend not to notice them until they come together into clumps large enough to support commercial agriculture. We just need to understand that about each other. That passage has always stuck with me, and I want you to know, Dave Barry, while you're here, that I have used the "men are cleaning impaired" excuse with my wife at least 5 times a year for the last 24 years. Unfortunately, while the concept happens to be extremely true, the argument remains ineffective, but I will keep trying. Dave Barry is the author of dozens of best-selling books. He was the subject of the TV series Dave's World. Dave's World's fans. As far as I'm concerned, Dave Barry is the GOAT of American humor writing, the greatest of all time. Now, some guy's going to come to me after this and say, "What about Mark Twain or David Sedaris?" or insert the name, and I'm going to say, "You know what? I don't want to hear it. Build your own Mount Rushmore." It's always been a dream of mine to host Dave Barry at our festival, and perhaps on some level it was that phone call, Mom, that helped us get to this point. Also was his publicist. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dave Barry.
So I think we're just going to have a conversation here, and
we're out of time.
But he's pretty funny, that guy. So I've known Dave for 40 years, and in those 40 years, I can't remember a single year where he hasn't done a book tour. And now he's at the tail end of a 3-week book tour. And Dave, I just wondered if you could share some of the glamour and glitter.
Yeah, you're right. I've been in many. The thing is, you lose all self-respect on a book tour, and you do basically anything they tell you to do whatever the schedule says you're supposed to do, wherever you're supposed to go, whoever you're supposed to talk to, you do it. I'll give you one example, kind of a ethical low point. In the 90s, I was on book tour, and I was in St. Louis at a hotel, and I got a call from the publicist who said the Oprah show is trying to get in touch with you. Can they call you? She was really excited because obviously you want to go on the Oprah show if you can. So I said, sure. The producer for the Oprah show segment called me up and said, we're going to do a segment on the show tomorrow. We'd like you to be on the panel if we can work it out. And I go, sure, what? And she goes, it's going to be a show about righting wrongs. So we're going to have the panelists each confess to something they've done wrong, and then on the air they're going to make it right. So can you think of, so I'm racking my brain because I want to be on the Oprah show, and I came up with something, which is that a few years earlier, I'd been in a Hyatt hotel, and in the bathroom there was a sign. It was like a V-shaped plastic sign that said, "Our guest towels are 100% cotton. Should you wish to purchase a set, they are available for $75. Should you prefer to take the set already in your room, that will be added to your bill." So it was a nice way of saying, if you steal our signs, we'll charge you $75. So I stole the sign. But I thought it was funny, and I took it home and put it in the guest bathroom. And we had, and it's all true. And we had it there for years, and the guests were amused by it. So I told the Oprah producer this, and she's like, perfect. You'll come on the show tomorrow, you'll tell that story, and then we're going to have a box, and you'll drop the sign in a box, and we'll return it to the Hyatt Hotel people. That's perfect. And I'm like, great, except for one thing, which is I was in St. Louis. The Oprah show was the next day in Chicago, and the sign was in my house in Miami. So I'm desperate, but then it occurs to me, I'm staying in a Hyatt Hotel in St. Louis. So I stole another sign. This one had nothing to do with towels. It was like no smoking, but you couldn't tell from a distance. So I stole that sign, came on the Oprah show, dropped the sign in the box. And my point is, in a show about righting wrongs, I stole twice and lied on the Oprah show. And so that's the kind of whore you become on book tour. And here I am, Here I am. So now I'm happy to be here in Gaithersburg. Mayor Judd keeps telling me that it's the most diverse city in America. And, okay, shut up first. Shut up. Hear me out. I live in Miami. I moved there in 1986 from the United States, okay? I don't know how you measure diversity, but if you go by driving styles, Miami destroyed, because everybody in Miami is driving according to the law of his or her individual country of origin, and we have many. It's very diverse, is what I'm saying. Tom's not going to get a chance to say anything. It's going to be me and Judd here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Swamp Story. Early in the book, there's a section that had a particular impact on me, and I'm sure it has that same impact on members of a certain demographic. And what I want to know is, what medical research did you do to determine the impact of a 5-iron at 50 miles per hour into the private sections of a male?
Yeah, okay. There's this scene near the beginning of the book. There's a couple of desperate characters, one of whom is named Phil. He's an alcoholic ex-newspaper man. He's based on me, and he needs money desperately, and so he's wearing a Dora the Explorer costume because the regular Dora the Explorer couldn't make it, and to a child's birthday party, where he ends up holding a piñata. Piñatas are a big deal in Miami birthday parties. I don't know about here, but I personally have seen what I'm described in the book happen, which was sometimes you have a dad. It's always a dad holding the piñata, and you have a small child with a stick and blindfolded, swinging. at just about crotch level, and some of these kids can develop a pretty good swing. It's a natural. You can't teach it. And so anyway, I created a scene in the book where it's a little girl, and instead of a stick, she's using a golf club. But to answer your question, I didn't actually research it because I already know what it would feel like. I think already. Yeah.
And speaking of pathetic characters, there are two other pathetic characters in that book of many pathetic characters, and they own a bait shop. And this is along the Tamiami Trail on the fringe of the Everglades. And the description of this bait shop is so forlorn. And my question is, are there any actual bait shops or other things along the trail like that are actually that bad?
Yeah, I did an enormous amount of research for me, but I actually went to the Everglades several times in person. And people think the Everglades are just this vast, undifferentiated swamp, but there is more to it than that. There are roads and little communities back there, and weird people, and weirder people, but along the Tamiami Trail, the old route that connects Miami and Tampa, there still are these places that are like sketchy roadside attractions, basically, which used to be a major industry in Florida, and now they're sort of being taken over by the big mega attractions like Disney. But although we're getting rid of Disney, apparently. Turns out to be the biggest single problem we have in the state. And thank God somebody's doing something about it. Anyway, but anyway, there are these roadside attractions, and they're the one that I feature in the book. They mention a lot is that these two guys they're jealous of. It's a real place. I did a book a few years ago called Best State Ever about Florida, and I went to a bunch of these old school Florida tourist attractions, and one of the ones that I fell in love with, and sort of generated the idea for the setting of this book is called the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters. The Skunk Ape is this theoretically, well, some people believe in it, the way people believe in Bigfoot, or people believe that there is somebody eventually on customer assistance going to answer your phone call. But the skunk ape is like that. It's this hairy thing that exists only in blurry photographs. And there's a guy out there named Dave Shealy who runs the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters, which is basically a place that you can buy T-shirts that say Skunk Ape on them. That's the research. And he claims to have seen it. And people come and stop there, and there are people still looking for the skunk ape and everything. So anyway, I just love that whole scene. And I spent a day with Dave Shealy just driving around the Everglades in the back roads there. And so I created these guys, Bortle Brothers Bait and Beer, who aspire to the success of the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters. But they're not really smart enough,
No, and speaking of swamps, I've been lucky enough Dave has invited me to visit in his home in Coral Gables, and it's no swamp there. But it seems, if you read this book, you can tell that Dave was very moved by the necessity of having to actually move through the swamp. I mean, people are wading in the swamp. And it seemed to me that maybe there was something, in the back of some experience that so traumatized him that even years of therapy couldn't help. And so he had to write this book.
I know what you're setting me up for, Schroeder. Yeah. Tom got me to do this. Is the most ridiculous thing I ever did, I think, as a humor writer. What Tom was writing a book about a guy named Clyde Butcher, right?
Clyde Butcher, yeah.
Famous photographer, lives out in the Everglades, takes basically one picture, which is like a bunch of trees. But people who like art really think it's great, And anyway, he's considered a genius, this guy, for this picture that he keeps taking the same one over and over and over. But anyway, Tom wrote a book about him, and I can't remember how you talked me into this. He said, it was you and Bill Rose, right?
Yes, and the Ranger.
And the Ranger.
Ranger John.
Ranger lunatic. and they said, we're going to go out into the Everglades, and I remember Tom said, you might get a little wet. And it turns out this was we had weeks of rain, so the Everglades were really, really high. And we go out there, and we're just T-shirts and shorts and sneakers, and we just follow this ranger into this swamp, and you have to, at some point you have to follow him because we don't know how to get back, and the swamp's getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and then we're swimming, we're up to here, remember that? And I mean, well, we don't know really if this is a real ranger. Even you could just get a costume, a ranger costume. We didn't ask to see any identification or anything. And he did have a hat, a ranger-style hat, but anybody could have that. And we get, well, no, I'll never forget, at one point we're out there, we're in this like a pool, and he goes, when we're in the middle of it, and we're now at this point we can't even, our feet are not touching the ground, we're treading water out here, and he goes, this is an alligator nest. And we go like, and we go like, well, where's the alligator? And he goes, well, she's around here somewhere, because... Remember that?
Yeah, and Dave was...
What are we doing?
Dave started yelling, we're not after your women.
Your women are alligators, which that would just annoy them because they know it's true, you know.
Well, this book, if you read this book, you'll see this has movie written all over it. I mean, do you already have a deal?
Yes, I sold the movie rights, but I can assure you that doesn't mean there'll ever be a movie.
That leads into my question, which is...
The movie is kind of like the skunk ape, you know. Some people believe in it.
Well, that
could be real. I don't know.
That leads me to my question, which is you've had the TV show, you've written several movie scripts, you've been involved with the industry on many different levels, and I wonder if you could give us your impressions of that. Either they're on strike now, of course, but when they were alive and dangerous, what was your...
Well, you mean like the process of dealing with the movie?
Yeah, of dealing with the Hollywood.
Yeah, well, okay. I've always had the same experience, which is they pay you money, and they say because they want to make it into something, and then you have a phone call with them. You never see them because they're too busy to meet with you, but you hear them on the phone. There's like 11 of them, and they sound like they're about 14 years old. And they all say, we love it, which is the absolute lowest thing you can say. Love it means, you know, we're aware that it exists, you know. But then when you write a screenplay for them, they read the screenplay and they say, we love it, which is bad news, is when they say that. But we have some notes, and then they give you notes, and the notes are always things like, okay, instead of being in a swamp, guys in a swamp, how about if it's in Vegas? You know, and instead of, and could it be during like World War III? You know, anyway, and so they have all these, they call them notes, and you write everything down, and then you make all these changes that they ask you to make. And then, you send them in, and then whenever they are able to schedule all 14 of them to be on a conference call again, they get back on the phone with you, and they go, we love the notes, love what you did, love it. Here are some more notes. And the notes are like, half of them are, things that you changed because they asked you to. They want you to change it back because they haven't read either the original version or the newer version. They just had some, flunky tell them, what he or she thinks they ought to do. So anyway, the process is very depressing. On the other hand, they send you money, which brings us back to, like stealing the sign in the Hyatt Hotel. I have no ethical standards at all.
So, having known Dave for years and years, it's hard not to envy his success. I envy his multiple best-selling books. I envy the huge crowds he draws. But the thing that I really care about and I really envy is that he sings in a rock band.
Well...
So is there a question? I don't know.
Yeah, well, okay. Just so you know what he's talking about, I belong to an author rock band called the Rock Bottom Remainders, which it depends. It mutates over the years, and sometimes different people show up for different gigs. Gig's a musical term, like B sharp, But if everybody's there, like Stephen King, Amy Tan, Roy Blunt Jr., Scott Turow, Mitch Albom, Ridley Pearson, Greg Iles, James McBride, a lot of very good authors. Not a good band. We're not a good band. We play what Roy Blunt Jr. describes as hard listening music. That's our genre. But we played for many years, and we play always for charities. Although sometimes after they've heard us, they don't want the money, But we do our best, and it's been great. But I do have a cautionary tale, if I may, here about that something I learned playing in this band that it's important. And since I don't have anything else important to tell you, I'm going to tell you this. We understand there are bands who what they do is they practice the songs ahead of time. If you're following what I'm saying. What we do, we don't do that. We play the show, and then we go, boy, we should have practiced those songs ahead of time, but then it's too late, so we go to a bar. So anyway, that leads me to my cautionary tale. So this is in New York in 2010, and we had played a show in New York City, and we all went to the hotel bar afterward. And I'm just going to say it out front here. I had too many vodka gimlets that evening. Happened to be fond of vodka gimlets, and people were buying them, and you have no choice. If people buy you a vodka gimlet, you have to drink it. It's like a law in New York City. So I was a little bit impaired, and I'm sitting in between two really great people, Roy Blunt Jr., very, very funny, and Scott Turow, a brilliant guy, interesting guy. And I'm trying to follow both of them. They're both talking, and Roy's just basically telling story after story. But Scott is telling this long, complex, intense anecdote about his spleen. And I'm confused by his wording at one point. And it was my fault. I'm impaired. But I go like, wait a minute. I thought you said you don't have a spleen. And he goes, no, I don't. That's the whole point of the story. I don't have a spleen. Okay, so we go on. I'm listening to Roy a little, and then I come back, and then I become confused again because it seems to me that Scott has a spleen the way he's talking. And so I interrupted it again and said, I thought you didn't have a spleen. And he goes, I don't have a spleen. That's the point. Anyway, I ended up interrupting Scott Turow 3 times about his spleen. And he's a very patient and nice man, but at some point he became fed up. So he pulls up my sleeve and takes a Sharpie and writes on my right forearm in big letters, "No spleen." And that solved the problem for the evening. So everybody goes to bed, not together. Everybody goes to bed in separate beds. And then the next morning, we had to get up early to take a train to Boston to play another show. So I get up, and I'm not in good shape, okay? And I'm staggering toward the bathroom, and I catch sight of myself in the mirror, and I see something is written on my arm. And I look down, and it says, "No spleen." And I have no memory of how that got there. And you know this urban legend of the salesman, and he's in a hotel, and an attractive woman makes friends with him and slips him a Mickey, and then he wakes up the next morning in the bathtub packed in ice, and there's a note on his chest that said, "We've harvested your kidney." So like just for a few horrible seconds in New York, I'm thinking, oh my God, they've harvested my spleen. But I don't even know where to look, you know? You know where your spleen is? So then my brain slowly reboots, and I realize, like, nobody would harvest your spleen. You don't even need a spleen. That's the whole point of Scott's story. There's probably an expression in organ harvesting circle. He's so dumb he'd harvest a spleen, you know? So, but my point is, the cautionary tale from in being in a band is you should go easy on the vodka gimlets. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you.
There's another rock bottom remainder story that I always loved. And do you remember? I wonder if you remember it. It involved playing with the boss.
Oh yeah, we played. We were in L.A. playing for a booksellers group, and somehow somebody in the band knew somebody who knew Bruce Springsteen, and so the rumor kept going around that Bruce was going to be there, and we're like, yeah, sure he is. Anyway, so we're done with all our songs. We have one song left, and out comes Bruce Springsteen. So I immediately hand him my guitar because I want to be able to say for the rest of my life, Bruce Springsteen played my guitar. I can't say it now. But I want to be able to say Bruce Springsteen played my guitar. Anyway, but the song that we have left is called Gloria, G-L-O-R-I, and it's a very simple song. If you take a guitar and throw it on the ground, it will play Gloria, okay? But I have to turn to Bruce Springsteen, the master, the boss, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and say, Bruce, do you know Gloria? He goes, I think I can. But the best part of that whole thing is that I sing lead on Gloria. And so I'm thinking Gloria, and then everybody else goes, Gloria. So that was, everybody else included Bruce Springsteen. So my point is, Bruce sang back up to me. Yeah.
Well, the one thing about Swamp Story, as the mayor pointed out, is that it's.
Oh, he's still here. Don't you have like work to do? You're the mayor. There's a lot of traffic out there, dude. I see a pothole. I can see it from here.
Is that it really portrays Florida as a completely insane place. And as all of us who've lived in Florida for a long time know, is it doesn't even come close. So, I mean, why don't you talk about how you failed to capture the reality of how weird Florida is?
Florida is very, very weird. A lot of weird things happen in Florida. A lot of people do crazy, stupid things. The whole Florida man thing is up. But be fair here. Like, Florida has 21 million residents. Is it fair to judge 21 million of us because of the actions of 19 million of us? And it isn't always, even though I agree, many weird things happen there, it's not always our fault. And I'll tell you why in the form of a story that some of you may remember. It was a pretty famous story. In fact, Carl Hyacin built a whole book around this story, but it was a true story. This is some years ago. A woman was driving south on the overseas highway, which connects mainland Florida to Key West, a beautiful drive from hopping the Keys down to Key West. Anyway, according to the Florida State Florida State Highway Patrol report written about this incident, which was a very thorough report, the woman was in a hurry to get to Key West because she wanted to see her boyfriend. She also wanted to look good for her boyfriend, so she decided to shave her bikini region. Now, some people would pull over to the side of the road to do that. Let's say she was in a hurry, so she decided to continue driving while shaving herself and outsource the steering of the car to her passenger, who was, and this is one of the things that made this a viral incident, her ex-husband. It's all true, all in the Florida Highway Patrol report. So they're going south about 40 miles an hour. She is operating the accelerator, but not looking at the road because she's shaving. And her ex-husband is steering the car from the passenger side. So what could possibly go wrong, right? The car in front of them slows down to make a turn. They slam into it, and that becomes the story, all right? We run the story in the Miami Herald. Every other newspaper in the country picked it up. Every morning Zoo FM show picked it up. Every late night talk show host jumped. And it was all about how stupid Florida is. Florida. You believe this woman in Florida. Hey, it's Florida people. Florida. That woman was from Indiana. Okay? She was shaving her Hoosier is what she was doing. No, I always wondered what that referred to. But we got the blame, and this is what happens. We people come to Florida to do stupid. We are like the Ellis Island for stupid people. But not all, and they keep coming more and more. Like, we're doing everything to turn them away. We're raising the sea levels, and they keep coming.
All right, should we do
Yeah. So I think we've covered everything pretty thoroughly. But if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy. Tom and I both will be happy to answer them. Any problems at home you want to share with the group, we can get that out right now. Yes, right there. In the Washington Post magazine, we always see my annual year in review. What will we do? The magazine shut down. In fact, my year in review was the last cover story, so I feel like maybe that was my fault. I don't know. Maybe they just said, "Wait, we can't be publishing this crap." I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It runs in the Miami Herald, which is where I work technically. So I'll write a year in review, but where it runs, I don't know.
I'm sure they'll stick it somewhere.
I don't.
Probably on.
I'll tell you where they can stick it. Yes.
Okay, this isn't a question, but
This isn't a question.
as soon as I saw you were going to be here, I needed to tell you this.
But as soon as she saw that I was going to be here, she needed to tell me this.
I have been reading you. I started reading you in the late 70s, early 80s when you were on the comic pages of the Washington Post once a week.
Yes.
And
I'll tell you if she says anything important.
fishing with rifles, so you had this beautiful description of a guy sitting in a tree with a fishing pole trying to catch deer. Was the point of this little thin, I don't know, is it a column? The little square that's on the Washington Post, we're talking 40 years ago.
I think she's thinking of Art Buchwald, actually.
We are often confused for each other.
Art was one day and you were another.
Yeah, I don't think that was me. Just to summarize her question, which isn't a question, she saw something 40 years ago that might have been me, but we don't know. It might have been the skunk ape. We don't know. But thank you for thinking of it here. Over here, yes, sir.
Thank you for all the funny columns, but most of all, thank you for the piece you wrote called A Journey into My Colon. People get colonoscopies. I have sent that to so many people. You laugh, but it also has a point. That's the best thing you ever wrote.
He's thanking me for the column I wrote. It's probably the most viral thing I ever wrote is about getting a colonoscopy, which everybody should do. People don't do it because they're afraid that they're going to take a tube and stick it 17,000 feet up your butt, which they are. Exactly what they do. In fact, the big danger is that the tube will exit you and enter another patient. But you should do it anyway because they give you drugs. They give you excellent, excellent drugs. When it's over, you go, like, let's do that again, man. You know. The only thing is, I will warn you, you should get a colonoscopy. You will not feel it. You'll not even know it happened. But I should warn you, the preparation can be a little, I don't want to be too explicit here, but the day before you take a nuclear laxative so powerful that your bowels travel into the future and you expel food you have not even eaten yet. So there is that. But everybody should get a colonoscopy. All right, anyway.
And that's where they're going to stick the urine review, too.
Yes.
Can we ask a question of your mother?
Can you ask a question of my mother? She's not here. Yeah, my mother died in 1987, but I am in contact with her. And she's saying she's busy right now. So you could ask the mayor's mom if you want later, but look at them horning in. Okay, go ahead. Mayor's mom is asking. What can we? All right. Well, the one of the parts of the book that actually the reason I wrote the book in the first place was this thing called the Python Challenge, which is the most Florida thing ever, in my opinion. We have an issue in South Florida, particularly with Burmese pythons, which are these huge constrictors. They can be 15 feet long, sometimes longer, big things. That are what happened was people originally had them as pets, and then these people ran out of crack, and said, "Oh my God, I'm living with a giant constrictor. I better let it go." And so they let them go, and they thrive down there. They're like New Yorkers. They love South Florida. And they don't have any natural enemies. They eat everything else. Nothing can eat them. And the mama pythons lay like 100 eggs a year, whatever. So anyway, the estimates are now that there's like 100,000 or more pythons out in the Everglades, just swarming all over, and we can't get rid of them. So the solution that Florida came up with, which is, people think I made it up, but I didn't. It's a Python challenge. It's a contest, a 10-day contest we've been running once a year for the last 10 years or so, where we offer cash prizes for people to come down and kill our pythons. And it attracts the kind of individual who would think that would be a good thing to do, you know? So they come down, and it's quite bureaucratic. The state runs it, so you have to go on the state website, and you have to register, and you have to pay a registration fee. And then you have to take a brief online course on how to kill pythons, which ask anybody who's ever dealt with dangerous animals in the wild how you learn to do that. A brief online course is the way to go. And part of the course is like how the correct way to kill the pythons. You can't just, I would think the best way would be to whack the head off. No, you're not allowed to do that because, according to the state website, the brain keeps thinking. Python keeps on thinking. It doesn't say what it's thinking, but it's thinking. So you have to use a certain technique to destroy the brain of the python. So anyway, every year, we've been doing this 10 years, every year they announce the results at the end of it, and it's like, they killed 200 pythons, 300 pythons. So you do the math. There's hundreds of thousands of them out there. We're killing 200 or 300 a year, and meanwhile, all the females are laying 100 eggs each. So like the pythons are winning. We should have challenged something we could defeat. We should challenge the New Yorkers. You know, like we should have a New Yorker challenge. Like you couldn't cut off their heads either, by the way. But you have to do something. That would be inhumane. Yeah. Yes.
Will you be doing any more children's books? Your worst class trip ever was my kid's absolute favorite book. It accompanied us on so many road trips, and we look out.
You're very slow readers then, I take it. No, it was not that. Or these were short trips. I don't. No, well, thank you. First of all, I loved writing kids' books. I wrote a bunch with Ridley Pearson, and then that one was just one I wrote myself. And I don't know. I don't have any immediate plan, but I did like writing for kids. They're fun readers. They're very different from adult readers. And like they never ask questions like anybody's here asking. They always ask questions like, "How come the alligator?" Whatever. Something they believe it's real, and you're like going to explain it to them better because you didn't do it right in the book. But my favorite all-time fan letter was one of the books. Might have been the class trip book. It was two boys who wrote and said, "We think your book is one of the awesomest ones out there. Just so you know, two of the authors our book club has written to have died." Yes, sir.
Yes, about your theory on the skunk ape, it's a cryptid from cryptozoology,
Right.
and there are Bigfoot sightings all over the world.
Right. I'm not arguing that they don't exist. I'm just saying they never seem to have really sharp pictures of them. Yes. Whatever. Well, the Miami Herald hired me, and because of very poor planning on their part, they're located in Florida. Will I ever write a sequel to Lunatics? I wrote a book with a guy named Alan Zweibel called Lunatics. And I don't know if we'll ever write a sequel, but we just finished the screenplay. So this will never be made into a movie. But a screenplay exists, which was a lot of fun to write. Anyway, it was fun. One of the weird things about that book is with like wacky humor, things could never, what in a million years happen. And this was, well, I can't remember, like 2012 or whatever. We had Donald Trump elected president. And then everybody go, come on. But we did, before he did. I mean, I don't know if we were responsible. Yes? Yes, I was. Thank you. A man wants to be groomed, on 95. Everybody goes 100 miles an hour on 95. Yes.
Have you ever written about the villages?
Have I ever written about the villages? Yeah, in the book, The Best State Ever, I went to the villages, which is this giant community north of Orlando where all these people, 50, 60, 70 years old, go to drink a lot and hang out and play golf, and they love it. They're really happy. And they do have gimlets there, yeah. But what they really do is line dance. They do a fantastic, they do a fantastic amount of line dancing, which is kind of a strange thing to see behaving. But yeah, people get all upset about the villages, but I figure they're pretty harmless up there. Like they're, up there, all day long. So they don't scare me, the villagers. Yes. Are my books still allowed to be in Florida Library? No. Well, as a concerned parent, I certainly hope not. I wouldn't want to put you any part of any library that would have me as a book. Yes. Yeah, you. We can't hear you. Tell the mayor, because he hasn't done anything lately. And he's just standing there, and he'll pass it along. He's a communicator. I did. I told I'll just short version. Don't drink too many vodka gimlets. Okay, that's the band. We people sometimes ask, what's it like to be in a band with Stephen King, which is kind of entertaining. And he's really more normal than you might think. He's really very smart, very funny. He can sometimes be a little strange. We do with Stephen. We used to do a teenage death anthem called "Last Kiss," which is one of those songs from the 50s, 60s where the kids get in a car crash and it's terribly tragic and everything. Anyway, so one night we're doing that song, and we get to and we're actually not sounding terrible, and we get to the part where the crash has just happened, and Stephen sings, "When I awoke, she was lying there. I brushed her liver from my hair." So I'm not saying he's completely normal, but what I remember was one night, Stephen's fans are a little, they make you nervous sometimes. There are a lot of them, and but we were doing a show one night, and Stephen was standing near the front of the stage, looking down with great concern, and there's a woman in front of him, standing right in front of Stephen, going, and all 10 of her fingernails were on fire, flames coming, and like I don't know how she did that. Maybe she just has that power. Like, but Ridley Pearson, the bass player, goes by me and goes, "I don't ever want to be that famous." Yeah. Yes, sir.
My late father-in-law was a synagogue cantor, owned a Nash Rambler, and your dad, I understand, also did, and he was a minister, right? So is this like preacher's car? Or?
Yeah, but my dad. Yeah, I don't know about your dad. Well, we didn't have much money when I was growing up. My dad was a minister, and he bought the shittiest cars. I don't know where we had like a Hillman Minx. Nobody in the world's ever had a Nash Metropolitan, which is like a little car that barely holds one person. But anyway, I don't know why we're sharing. But did it scar you for life? We had a Plymouth Valiant. That was the first car I was allowed to drive when I turned 16, and it was like, it had basically the same acceleration characteristics as the Lincoln Memorial. Like,
It was a real chick magnet.
Put your foot down on the gas. Like the police didn't even need a car to pull you over. They just run alongside. Pull over. Yes. Any plans to update the book of bad songs? Say what? There's plenty of material. Well, here's the problem. First of all, the book of bad songs. What happened was this came about because of a column I wrote where I said, and I want to stress right now, I no longer believe this to be the case. Okay. But I made the mistake of saying that maybe Neil Diamond was not the greatest lyricist who ever lived. What I was specifically referring to is the song where Neil sings with great intensity and passion, I said to no one there, and no one heard at all, not even the chair. You know that song? It's like no kidding, Neil. Like, probably the table didn't pick up on it either, because these are articles of furniture. So I wrote that in the column. It was not the point of the column. It was like just a joke in the middle of the column, but you think Salman Rushdie got in trouble. I got all this really furious mail from Neil Diamond people, with spittle all over it, saying, "How dare you insult this man? Is a great man. I listened to Heartlight 14 times, Mr. Barry, and it cured my goiter." So then I wrote. That was good. Bad when you get hate mail. If your columnist, that's good, because then you can write another column about it. So I wrote another column about, wow, the Neil Diamond people really don't like when you criticize Neil Diamond. But then a whole lot of people wrote in more agreeing with me. Like, and here's some other songs that I don't like. And so I wrote a whole new column about songs people don't like. And that just unleashed the floodgate. I mean, suddenly over the next month, I got 20,000 letters from people say Americans don't care about issues, but this is one they care about. And I got all this, and anyway, that became the book, the book of bad songs. And I still hear from people come up to me, and still to this day, and say, like, that the song about the horse with no name, I hate that song. I had a friend, the late Rich Jenny, great comedian, was a friend of mine. The joke he used to tell is, "You're in the desert, you got nothing to do, name the freaking horse." But anyway, to answer your question, so I wrote that book, the book of bad songs. but I don't think I could do that now. And the reason is that was like in the 90s when, for the most part, people were listening to generally the same music. Now everybody's in the silo. People listen to whatever they want to listen to and nothing else. So you can't really, there's no common ground. Also, all the music today sucks. No, I'm just kidding. Some of it's really wonderful. I just think it sucks, but it's wonderful. I know it's really, I'm old, so I'm 75 years old, so, it sounds old, but it's the new 73. Yeah.
So I started reading you when I was 6 years old.
Okay, so you want to just make me feel really old, don't you? Yeah.
So me and my best friend, we used to read your books out loud back and forth to each other. And Dave Barry Does Japan was our favorite. Specifically a conversation between two American businessmen that was really very informal. And to this day, so we're 41 and 42 now. And to this day, every time we meet each other, we have that conversation.
The same conversation.
She lives in Japan now, so I just wanted to, from her, tell you thank you because she probably would have never moved there if we hadn't read Dave Barry Does Japan.
Okay, just for those of you who didn't hear that, basically she has a friend who was forced to move to Japan because of a book I wrote. And also, I'm very old, but that's Anyway, I think we're out of time. Thank you all for coming out. Mayor Judd, Tom Shroder.